let's warm up with a drawing of our hand. So just as we've been doing every week, we're going to turn to the next page in your sketchbook that you see there. So turn to your last drawing from last time and flip the page, and that's where we're going to do our next drawing. So today, the hand pose for 15 minutes, I'm going to get you to grab a pencil and pretend that you're writing, and that's going to be the pose that we draw in today. So I'm actually going to use this pencil because I need to draw with that one. It actually feels super weird because I don't hold a pencil with my left hand, so it feels kind of funny. But you're just going to be doing your 15-minute drawing of your hand holding a pencil. So take some time to do that, and then I'll see you in 15 minutes when we'll start our gesture drawing. Welcome to our second online drawing tutorial. So you have been doing a whole bunch of figure drawings in your sketchbook, and today what we're going to do is a quick review of the gesture method, followed by some practice with more complicated poses. So today we're not going to be drawing people standing straight and still. We're going to be drawing them in all sorts of interesting positions. Once we've practiced a bunch of tricky positions, we're going to be doing a developed drawing. And just to remind you what that is, that's when we draw a gesture first, and then we put the detail and shading on top. And we'll finish off with a bit of a drawing challenge where I'm going to get you to try to draw two people in one pose, like in one drawing, one picture. And that's a little bit tricky, trying to get them all to line up properly. So that's where our lesson is going today. But first things first, we're going to review what a gesture looks like. And the most important thing about the gesture is that you're getting your proportions right. So to review that, we started with a head, followed by a spine and hips or pelvis. And just reminders, the pelvis is only a little tiny bit wider than the head, okay? So next step, we're going to measure that, draw a line, and that's where your feet have to reach. So don't have your feet dangling around up here somewhere. So then we'll add our sausage legs, knee, bottom half, top, knee, bottom, and then we can have a foot sticking out and a foot facing head on. All right, let's do a shoulder line. Shoulder line slightly curved, slightly wider than the hips, and we've left a little bit of room for the neck. So we'll put circles on each end for the shoulders, connect, and then we're going to mark off how low the hands will hang, and they hang halfway through this first sausage shape. So make sure you mark off that line, otherwise you'll make your hands or your arms too short. So that is just a very quick review in case anyone forgot those very important proportions. This equals that. It has to be the same or they won't look correct. All right, so I drew this nice and dark for you to show you the proportions, but the way you need to be doing gestures is as lightly as possible and quickly as possible, right? So when we were working in class, we were trying to master the art of doing them quickly. Remember, I had my phone out and we were timing them so that you had to do them in around a minute each. So we quickly capture the pose without stressing about details. Nice and light. Keeping it light is going to become very, very, very important for when we add layers on later. So today, when you get the link for this video, your parents will also have a link to these worksheets. And on these sheets, you're going to see all kinds of different complex poses. There's 7 here, and then 8 on the next page. So what I need you to do is, if you've got a timer, you can set your timer, and you can spend 1 minute on each of these poses, just capturing them really quickly. And it's not going to be as easy as it was before, because they are not straight. They're not standing up nice and straight. They're bending in all sorts of crazy ways. So you're going to have to really watch carefully what the angles are on these guys, right? So there's unusual angles happening. and you can just carefully observe and you should be fine. So that's sort of like what one would look like. And notice that it's very light, it's very quick, and we haven't, like, no dark lines. So I'll just show you this one quickly. If you want to set a timer, that's a good idea. Try to do them in under a minute. But they're tricky. You're going to see weird things like this angle was not what I expected. It's a lot lower than I thought. If you need to make any corrections, don't use an eraser. Just go all sloppy on top of the mistake. Just fix it. Okay, so weird angles. Everything here is very strange looking. But when it's complete, it should look fine. So you're going to be doing this page followed by this page. These are just slightly more complicated, so they will get harder as you go along. And then what we're going to do is move on to a developed drawing. So take a few minutes to complete all the gestures that you see on these two sheets. Okay, now that you're back and you've warmed up and you've done all these gesture drawings, we're going to attempt our first developed drawing of the day. Now remember, a developed gesture is first the gesture followed by a detail layer on top. And after the detail layer, we do shading. So there's 3 steps always. Step 1 is you do a light gesture. Step 2 is you add detail. Step 3 is you shade it. So let's try one of the following, and I would like you to do at least one. If you'd like to do 2 or 3, you're absolutely welcome to, but we're going to take a few, about 20 to 30 minutes to tackle one of these guys. So this is important. It will take at least 20 minutes to get this level of detail. Maybe if you choose the guy in the middle, it will take less time. I feel he's less complicated than some of these ones. Less wrinkles, less details. But I'm going to choose the girl. So make sure that you can see your drawing very well from where you are. Don't be drawing like this, just making things up. Remember, we've been training our eyes to see things well and accurately. You can't do that if you're not looking at your reference. So I've got a head, I've got a spine and hips, then I'm going to measure, and then I'm going to carefully get the legs in. They're in a bit of a different pose, so I have to be careful that I get all that proper. There's the second leg, and it kind of tips behind the first one, but I'll still see the tip of that foot. And I'll come up to the shoulder line. Should be a little wider than the hips. Join them up. And then her hands are just pretty simple. They're just hanging down. Straight down to about there, which is where we know they should be. Okay, so there's my gesture, and you'll notice that it's nice and light, right? Light is so important because the next step is to put the detail on top. We've got our gesture. Now we're going to add detail. The detail is where you can draw dark, slightly more dark than you have. So you have learned already how to do faces. We spent 2 classes on faces, but I would suggest for these drawings to keep them very simple. Don't get in there with tons of crazy detail, because sometimes they just start to look a bit scary. So I like to keep my my face just very simple at first. We can always go back later. So she's got short, kind of shaggy hair. And remember that hair is a shape, right? Hair is not this. Okay, hair is a shape first of all. And you can add some of that later. Okay, so I've got the shape of her hair, and now I can put just a little bit of detail in there. All right, let's move down to the neck. kind of a low shirt line. She's got a jacket on top. So what you'll be doing is taking your time and just finishing up the detail on this piece. The detail layer is just going to be slightly darker than the gesture. So you work on that for about 10 minutes and I'll meet you back when it's time to shade. Alright, so we've spent a bit of time getting all the detail in, and the detail is a little darker than the gesture. So you'll notice that my gesture has just kind of faded away. Like you don't even really see it anymore. Even though it's still there, it just kind of disappears into the drawing. Alright, so we have done the gesture, we've done the detail, and the last and one of the most important things to do when you're drawing is really send it at the end with some good shading. So to remind you of your value scale, we go from 0, which is white, to 10, which is black. And it's always important to make your 10s true 10s. So don't just take the easy way out and make everything like a weird sort of half number 5 or number 3. You want to actually deal with all of the values that you see there. So if you want to do a little value scale just to warm up before you start, that might be a good idea. It'll get you used to the darks. So I always like to do my darks first to find all my 10s and fill them in. So look at your drawing, find your 10s, and make them true 10s. That means 100% black. So I've got a lot of that in my subject's hair. It's very, very dark. So now's your chance to press hard and draw dark if you like that. Alright, so there's obviously a few more 10s. The strap of her bag is a 10. It's got some little details. There's a buckle here, and there's sort of a label down here. Really important to get all those details as we work. Don't just skip things. Alright, I've got 10s in the shoes. So I'm going to do them now. So as you're drawing, go ahead and find all of your 10s. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. Alright, now that our 10s are done, we're going to find some of the 9s and 8s. And those are going to be predominantly this area of the pants, that area of the pants. So I find it's usually helpful to at least shade the whole thing. I'm going to shade this about a 5. If you've got smudge sticks at home and you were one of those students that loved using the smudge sticks, definitely grab those. Do some smudging. So that's about this shade, but then up here and down there it's much, much darker. So there's a lot of wrinkles. So keep shading for a few minutes, and I will meet you back when we're finished all that shading. So there's my drawing after about 20 minutes. So you'll see I've got the shading in. I always like to put like a puddle of shading around their feet a little bit, so it looks like they're standing on something instead of just floating in the middle of the page. But anyway, have a go at number 1, 2, or 3, and if you just love it and can't get enough, you can do more than one. But please try at least one. Then we are ready for our challenge, which is to draw 2 people together. So I will leave you with this. It should take you about half an hour again, but don't forget the process. First, the gesture, really light. Second, the detail. And third, the shading. So give this one a go. And if they turn out really great, ask your parents to maybe send a photo of them so that I can have a look at what you've been doing. I would love to see your drawings from this week. So again, this was our lesson 2, and I will see you again next week for lesson 3 of 4. Next week we're going to be tackling something that's called foreshortening, and it's when people are sitting and they're their legs or their arms are facing you, how to draw that. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and I will see you back then.